Good morning, church. So, me and my family, we have a dog named Sky. And other than the fact that she sheds too much, she's probably the best dog that I've ever had. She's a husky mix, and she has these really beautiful blue eyes, and hence the name Sky. Now, over the years, for some reason, I started calling her Guy Guy. Our youngest daughter, Josephine, has grown up around Sky, or Guy Guy, and in her toddler mind, she has come to associate any four-legged furry creature with Sky. So when she sees another dog or a cat or a horse or a cow, she'll point and say, "Guy Guys." Obviously, this is cute and a little bit humorous, but that's because she's a little kid who isn't even 2 yet. But if I were to go to a farm with you and I kept calling the cows and horses and cats and goats and dogs Guy Guys, you might say that something is off. Maybe I don't use the term Guy Guys, but you can tell that I'm calling all of the different four-legged furry creatures the same thing. You might think that, at least in the area of animal recognition, something hasn't developed quite properly in my mind. And I think that would be a fairly sound assessment. Now, let me give you another story. One that's fairly widespread, but I think it's useful with what I'm going to talk about. When the Secret Service or another organization is training people on how to spot counterfeit currency, they spend a large or inordinate amount of time studying the real thing. They look it over. They take note of things that are part of a real dollar bill or a real coin. They look for certain marks of authenticity, like the watermark or security thread or the proper printing colors, the right size paper, or the correct texture. Once the real thing is known and it can be articulated and they know what they're looking for, then it becomes much easier to spot the counterfeit. Not only can it be spotted, but then they can explain why the real thing is superior to the cheaper counterfeits. So why do I bring up these two stories? One about a toddler calling all furry animals the same thing, and another about how professionals spot counterfeit currency. Well, that is because I think we might be on the verge of a technological revolution where Christians need to be able to recognize and be able to explain the difference between that which is truly human and that which is artificial. I'm speaking of artificial intelligence, or sometimes referred to as AI. And it seems to be becoming more present in our lives each day. We find it in the news, we find it on YouTube channels, we find it in everyday conversation. If you're in the workplace, that's a big buzz these days. And I don't bring this up to scare anyone. Rather, this is why I bring it up. I'm here to say that we, as the church, as the salt of the world, as God's ambassadors, are the ones who need to be truly thoughtful and aware so that we can speak the truth into a world in which the real and the artificial will become more and more difficult to distinguish. I've seen people repost videos or audio clips in social media, Facebook or something like that, that they believed were real, but it turned out that they were AI generated. These people, I don't believe, were trying to deceive anyone, but they were themselves deceived. And that led to them unknowingly sharing something that wasn't true. They were fooled because either they had not developed their senses in mind to detect the difference between AI and real life, kind of like a toddler calling all animals the same thing, or because they had not paid real close attention to the real thing and were unable to distinguish something that wasn't real. Kind of like a person who is fooled by a counterfeit dollar because they've never really paid attention to what a real dollar is like. Now, I'm not saying that AI is necessarily evil. It may just be a tool that can be used for good. I'm not saying that it can't have useful applications. However, I am saying that there is great danger if we as Christians are not able to articulate the truth of who God is and the truth about his creation. In particular, we as Christians have to know what man is or what humanity is so that we're not deceived by an artificial version. We have to know what real intelligence is, real knowledge, real wisdom, so that we're not easily fooled by a computational facsimile. Computers are great. I'm thankful for them. However, at the end of the day, they're not human. No matter how fast they become, no matter how much information they can process, they are not created, key phrase here, in the image of God. Over the next few weeks, I'm going to be exploring the topic of man being created in the image of God. And I have two goals in mind. One is simply this. It is good to know that what God has made. In particular, it is good to know what God says man is. Whether you lived 1,000 years ago, you live today, or you live 1,000 years from now, it is vitally important to know what God says about man. After all, he is the one that has created us. My second goal is this, is I want us to think about this crazy world that we're moving into, and I want us to be ready to give answers as to what truly distinguishes man from anything else in this world, whether it be an animal or a computer. I want us to know the difference between real humanity and artificial humanity. There might be super powerful computers that can some way resemble humans, but we as Christians, above all people, need to be able to say, this is what's made in the image of God, and this other is not. Today, I'm only going to read you 2 verses, but I think it sets the stage for this topic, the topic of thinking about who man is, who God says we are, and the idea of making sure that we know this so that we can distinguish it from any fakes that are out there. These 2 verses are going to be Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 and 27, where we read this. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Church, I want you to think, and I want you to remember that we are created in the image of God, and I look forward to exploring this topic with you over the next few weeks. I'll be praying for you. Please pray for me, and Lord willing, I'll see you next week.